Hey gang, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk through the grading or scoring rubric for your term paper, just to make sure that you know exactly what's expected, that there are no surprises, and that you've got the tools that you need in order to get the grade that you want. You see, if you have printed out the scoring rubric, which should be attached to the term paper drop box, that there's a lot of categories of things that I'm looking for, and some of them are technical kinds of things. You'll notice right off that almost half of it relates to what you've written in terms of how well it flows, how good you got your ideas across, and how well you demonstrated that you can really understand why we did this to begin with. 40 points out of 100 related to the content. 9 points related to whether or not you illustrated that you understood the purpose of why we did it. The real big subjective part of this is in those two areas, and unfortunately that's half of your overall grade, but I'm likely to be fairly lenient here unless you just do a horrible job of writing and you just really get off topic and you don't hit the main idea, you didn't really do what I asked you to. I'm probably going to give you the benefit of the doubt and give you the points here. When it comes to content, there will be some perfect papers. No doubt there will be some here and there that I just really struggle to find anything that's wrong with it in terms of what you've said, how you've said it, so forth. So if I think that this is a perfect paper, and if I were to give it letter grades, it would be an A+. That's 40 out of 40. From that point, it drops a couple of points at a time to kind of hit the categories of a solid A, a solid B, a B+, a C+, those kinds of things. If I think that this is not perfect, but it's really good, it's an A paper if I ever saw one, then you'll get 38 out of 40 points. If I think it's an A, but there is some room to work, it's a low A. If I were to put a number grade on it, it'd be a 90, 93, something like that. Then it's going to be 36 points out of 40. Then I'm going to look to see, is it a solid B paper? Is it a solid C paper? And really, that's about the lowest you're going to get if you turn anything in. You notice it goes on the grading rubric. Level 2 to level 1 is a drop from a C paper to didn't turn it in. So realistically speaking, if you turn anything in whatsoever, you're going to get at least 30 points out of 40 on the content. The second major category is the purpose. Why did we do this thing to begin with? You'll understand, or you'll remember, that what I had said in the introductory part of this is that I want you to really kind of do some deeper research and become more or less an expert in one area related to human resources and what's going on. So 9 points out of 9 if you do an outstanding job of making all this paper come together in a way that I says, yeah, you got the idea of what we're trying to do here. 7 out of 9 if you do a pretty good job. There's a little bit of a gray area for me in terms of putting it all together in a big picture. 5 points if you did a fair job. 3 if you did a poor job, but you tried. And then no points if you didn't turn in the paper at all. So again, those two pieces, the content and the purpose, 49 total points, not quite half, almost. Very subjective. How well do I feel like you did? It's a gut kind of thing. And I admit, I acknowledge going in that that's not necessarily fair, but if that unfairness is offset a little bit by a willingness to kind of give you the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to try to assign a lot of solid A papers or low A papers. Unless you just really struggle with it. All right, the third major piece is the structure, and I've asked you to do 6 things in particular. I've asked you to use Calibri font. I've asked you to use 11-point typeface. I've asked you to put a little header at the top and not have the extra stuff on the top of the first page. I've asked you to make your paper fill up 4 complete pages and be at least 3/4 of the way down the 5th page, no more than about 1/4 of the way down the 6th page. I've asked you to use 1.15 spacing between your lines with 0 on the top end and 6 on the bottom end. And if this is not ringing bells with you, if you're going, how in the heck do I do that? Please send me an email before you finalize your paper and let me help you with that. And I've also asked you to put your references on a separate document. Not part of the file that you submit for the paper, but on a second distinct separate document. If you do all 6 of those things, that's 12 out of 12. That is so easy. You do 5 out of 6, it's 10 points. So it's basically 2 points per thing. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle these things as I see them. If you do 4 out of the 6, it's 8 points and so forth going across. When it comes to the references, here's the part that's really different from what I'd originally proposed to you. I had told you to use 4 academic sources, but I've kind of backed off on that a little bit. I'd like you to use 4, but some of you don't like doing that research. You think you can write a paper that's 5 pages long without doing a whole lot of academic component to it. If you use 4 and you put them in the paper with the author date format APA style, I'm going to give you 10 points. If you use 3, I'm going to take off 2 points for missing 1 and give you 8. If you use 2 of them, I'll give you 6 points. If you only use 1, I'll give you 4. If you don't use any, you won't get any of those 10 points. So not using the academic references, and specifically the 4 academic references, means the difference between an A and a B. But if you work 4 in there, it's an easy 10 points. It doesn't even really have to be good quality at that point. If you've used 4, I can identify 4, it's 10 points out of 100. Related to that is the reference page that you're producing. Remember again that is a separate, distinct page. It's not page 6, it's a separate document. Document number 1 is Grimes paper.doc. Document 2 is references.doc. All right, if you have 4 references in your body of your paper, you're going to put all 4 of them on that reference page. If you do it in the correct APA format and it's in alphabetical order and whatnot, you've got 5 points out of 5. If you've only got 3 in the paper, but you put all 3 on that page in the proper reference, it's 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, so forth. So 15 points is your discretion. If you want to do the research and get all the articles and put them in there, that's 15 points if you do it right. If you want to cut back a little bit and only do 3, you'll lose a few points, but you're in control of that. And then the last few pages really are aesthetic. 7 points on grammar. As I'm going through this thing, I'm going to print it, and I'm going to be circling things and making notes in the margin. I'm not looking as much at the content as I am how you're saying what you're saying. And I'll put little G's and S's if I see grammar problems or spelling problems. I might put a G exclamation point if it's a big thing like an incomplete sentence or a fragment or something like that. But generally speaking, I'm just kind of looking for the flow. And I'll go back afterwards and I'll count up your G's for grammar errors, and I'll count up your S's for spelling errors, and I'll look to see where you are in this matrix. If you don't have any grammar errors, or you've got 3 minor ones, it's 7 out of 7. If you don't have any major errors, if you've got 4 or 5 minor errors, or if you have even 1 big error like a fragment or something like that, then it's going to deduct 1 point. Gosh, that's not a whole lot. You can potentially lose 4 points out of 100 on this paper if your grammar is horrible. But most of you have pretty good grammar. If you go back and proofread it, if you run it through the spell check on Word, you ought to eliminate most of that. Same thing with spelling. 0 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 11, 12 to 14. If you have more than 14 spelling errors, that's not college work, and you don't deserve to have credit for that. Then plagiarism. We are turning on a plagiarism prevention technique when you submit your paper, and I'm encouraging you submit your paper before the deadline. Come back and look at it an hour or 2 later, maybe the next day, because it should show you what that originality score is. And it's misleading. Originality low is better, because really it's a not originality score. The more that you have copied word for word from a journal article, from another term paper somewhere, from an internet web source, the higher that number is going to be. And I'm looking for a number that is almost 0, meaning that every word of that paper is yours. It's not copied from anywhere. And trust me on this, this software is broad enough, it is massive enough to find anything at all that you have copied word for word from other papers, even if those papers were submitted to Grand Prairie State College. If they've gone through this Turnitin.com type program, it's going to have it on a file, and it very quickly can reference and see where there's plagiarism. Even if you have copied word for word a document that you wrote, if it went through this software, it's going to pick it up as plagiarism. Now, we did not, as you were doing your journal articles, your SHRM articles, we did not run it through this. So these things that you have already written for this class are not in that database and won't count against you. If you have an originality score that is low enough, 0 to 4, full 10 points. If it goes to the 5 to 7 range, you lose a point. 8 to 10, you lose 2 points. If it gives above 17, meaning that almost a fifth of your paper, not counting the references, remember, almost a fifth of your paper is word for word from somewhere else, you don't deserve points. The last thing is, did you talk to the University Writing Center? If you will do that at least once, then I'll give you 5 bonus points. So theoretically, you could make 105 on this. But if you're poor at spelling and you've gone to talk to or you've online consulted with the University Writing Center, you can make up 5 of those points that you missed just as that bonus for the University Writing Center. Well, that's kind of my explanation of how this rubric works, what I'm looking for in each area. If you just concentrate on level 6 column and hit those things, you ought to do really well on this paper. If you write well, if you've gotten somebody else to look at it, if you've used the resources that are available in Word, you ought to do pretty well. If you have questions, especially when it comes to those things like the 1.15 spacing with the 0 top and the 6 bottom, however the phrasing is on that screen, please send me an email and I can talk you through it over the phone. Other questions, I'm happy to address. I don't always anticipate what you might need, so let me know if I haven't addressed it in this video. And good luck with the paper. I'm looking forward to reading them.